Today, we're going to talk about mindset, mentality. We're going to talk about those buzzwords that coaches and consultants and marketing people like using. And today, I'm forced into using them so I can get you guys to understand the difference between what you are as a business owner and what you want to be as a profitable business owner. But before we get into that, I want to talk to you about the Food Truck Owners Expo that's going to be in Houston, Texas this year on July 29th and 30th. I'm going to be giving two presentations, one on creating a profitable menu, one on marketing in your off-season, as well as I'll be out on the main expo floor holding what they call campfire sessions where you guys can sit down and talk to me and ask me questions, or you can just sit down and listen to me chat about important subjects dealing with being a food truck owner. Again, that's this year, July 29th and 30th, this year being 2024. We'll be in Houston, Texas. You can go to ftoexpo.com, order your tickets, and when you do, put in the code FTTG15, and that'll get you a 15% discount. Welcome to the 10-Minute Food Truck Training Podcast. My name is Bill Moore. I am a food truck business coach, author of 5 food truck vending books, including Food Truck 101 and Food Truck 201. This podcast is all about helping you start and grow your food truck business. How confident are you about your menu pricing? Are your prices profitable, or are you just scraping by? If you're not sure, I've got just what you need. Table Needs has built a super simple menu pricing calculator that you can use for free, and it will help you figure out the best price point for every item on your menu. Get started with Table Needs menu pricing calculator today at tableneeds.com, or you'll find a direct link in the description below the podcast. Let's talk about the mentality of a food truck owner versus what you want to become, and that's a CEO. Now, I'm not talking about somebody that sticks the letter CEO after their name because they started a food truck. I'm talking about a CEO that's actually earned the position. So let's talk about the differences between you as a food truck owner versus a corporate CEO and what their mindset is going to be like. When you as a food truck owner find yourself becoming reliant on tips, that means you have to be engaged with your guests daily. Now, the second that you employ somebody, those tips are not yours. That's a legal precedent that has been set for decades. The assumption when somebody gives a tip is it goes to a low-paid employee, not a rich, and you may not be rich, but the image of a business owner is that you are rich. So the employee gets all the tips. But you as a business owner, if you find yourself becoming reliant on tips either to pay yourself or to, in worst case, pay some expense of the business, you are not leading the business. You are not the CEO of the business. A CEO operates on the macro level. They oversee the company's strategic direction. And if you want to call yourself a CEO, then you are seeing the strategic direction of your food truck. You're not out there with your hand out, hey, I need a tip. I cooked your burger, give me a tip. I collected money from you, give me a tip. The CEO looks at the long-term growth. They look at the financial health of the business. Their focus is always going to be on broader objectives like creating a larger market reach, creating value to the people that own the company, and that being you. That's important. And then, of course, you also, as a CEO, are concerned with the competitive positioning between you against other food trucks. But if you got your hand out for a tip, well, guess what? You're not doing any of those things. So take the name CEO off of your business card. So here's an example of what that means. As a food truck owner, if you are focused on tips, you're going to go out of your way to remember your regular guests' names and their preferences, and you want to get them to give feedback. And you want to create a personalized experience for them so you can have a bigger tip. A CEO of a food truck is going to be focused on market trends. What's the new product we got to add? What's going on around the industry? They're focused on finding a new location, someplace better to sell from. They might be negotiating and getting better deals for supplies, finding a different produce supplier, getting a better deal. That's what a CEO does. They're not trying to figure out how can I get one more dollar tip out of this person. Cannot be focused on you making tips. For a business owner that is worried about collecting tips, they're doing that personalized high-touch service. That's the only way to get the maximum amount of tips. That's what you want to teach your employees to do because they're the ones getting the tips. They're the ones that legally get the tips. Your focus cannot be on getting tips. You want to teach them how to get tips and then move on. The owners that are focused on getting tips, they've got a close relationship with their guests. It leads to loyalty and repeat business, but their mentality is guest-centric. They have a hands-on approach to every aspect of the service delivery. That is not what a business owner does. That's what an employee does. That's what somebody that's dependent upon tips. So when your focus becomes on those day-to-day, let's make more money in tips, your mind is not working on how do I increase the business. So as a real CEO, you're looking at organizational efficiency, which means the employees do the work. They're the ones getting the tips. And then you, as a result of them doing the work and creating bigger and bigger tips from themselves, guess what you get? Higher and higher sales, higher and higher profitability if you're running the business right. But if you find yourself going, I work just as hard as they do, I deserve them tips, you've already lost. You have already lost. You will be in that position if you stay open, and that's a big question, if you stay open forever, which means whatever you're doing today, you'll be doing when you're 65 and 70 because you will have not built the business. You created a job. Say that so many times and people don't get it. If you're focused on tips, you have a job. A CEO doesn't focus on how do we get more tips? They focus on the decisions that are going to expand the business. How do we go from 1 truck to 2? How do we go from this location to a better location where we can sell more food within the same amount of time? They are focused on teaching the staff how to handle the guests so they can, in turn, handle the business. When your personal finances are tied to tips, they will always be tied to tips, and you are not a business owner. You're an employee. A great CEO is implementing systems and processes. I talk about this in Food Truck 201, how to get you off the truck. They're worried about being consistent, and they're worried about being efficient across all operations. That's what a CEO does. A CEO doesn't stick a tip jar out and go, hey, give me a tip. That is a small mentality. So let's say you own a coffee truck. You want to teach your employees how to up the tips for themselves. Teach them all about getting the details of their regular guests, finding where the guest lives, creating that friendly and inviting atmosphere so you can sell more coffee. Coffee is a part of people's habits, and that's awesome. The CEO of that food truck, though, a real CEO, not one that just knighted themselves as, here's your title, you're a CEO, but someone who has that CEO mentality. They're going to be focused on standardizing operations so that every single time the guest comes in, they get the exact same quality of service, the exact same quality of product with the exact same speed. And hopefully they can duplicate that into a second and a third and a fourth truck. They are a business owner. They are not an employee. If you're focused on tips, you're an employee. Business owners focused on tips automatically have a short-term outlook. They're driven by the need to maximize what? Daily earnings. Got to have a tip jar out. Got to make that money. Got to be able to pay my insurance payment. Their strategies become aimed at enhancing daily revenue, again, through giving exceptional service and upselling. But the problem is they're focused on what they should be teaching their employees to do so that they can back off of that stuff. The employees do the exceptional service. They do the upselling so that the business owner, a real CEO, is focused on moving the business forward. Moving the business forward is not you selling more burgers today than you did yesterday. That's an employee level thinking. A corporate CEO has a long-term vision, and then they have a plan to achieve that long-term vision. It will span, in most cases, years. What are we going to be selling next fall? Melissa and I are already talking about what our menu is going to be in the slow months, because we have the time now to talk about it, because the menu we're doing in the summer, we talked about last winter. It's all about thinking ahead. That's what a CEO does. And then they have people underneath them that handle the day-to-day operations. Even if you still have to be a part of your food truck, your mentality, your brain, your forethought has to be thinking ahead. Like I say, have a backup plan. CEOs have a backup plan. They figure it out. Somebody that's worried about tips has no backup plan because they're what? Worried about the immediacy of tips today. A tip-dependent business owner, a tip-dependent food truck owner is directly motivated by interactions and immediate feedback from the customers. Oh, you're patting yourself on the back when they say the food tastes great. No matter how slow it was getting out, they say, oh, it's awesome. You pat yourself on the back because you know they probably left you a tip and you're super excited about that. Your income becomes tied to that performance, that being your performance, and the guest satisfaction. It drives a high level of personal investment in your what? Work of your hands. You feel great about it because somebody loved your food. They tipped you $10. You're super excited. That's not what a CEO does. A CEO's motivation is tied to the company's performance. How much overall business did we do today? How quick were we? What was our speed of service? If you have a KDS, you should know your speed of service. If you don't have a KDS, you're stuck in the Stone Age. Get out of it. The CEO's motivation is, how is the company doing? How is the food truck doing? What kind of guest complaints did we get today? They're focused on things to make the business operate more efficiently and thereby put more money to the bottom line. That's where a CEO gets paid. That's where the business owner gets paid. You don't get paid from tips. Again, if you are worried about tips, your focus is in the wrong place. The focus is on the work of your hands, not the work of your brain. And until your brain starts to work and earn its keep, you'll be forced to be dependent upon the work of your hands. And that's where you get tips, the work of your hands. But again, as soon as you hire one employee, the tips aren't yours anymore anyway. So quit focusing on them. Business owners that rely on tips, they have to be highly adaptable. It's a great trait to have. They have to react swiftly to guest needs. And then, of course, they have to react swiftly to the feedback that they get, especially if it's negative feedback. That business model requires them to be flexible and responsive to be able to ensure repeat business. Yeah, all of that's awesome. All of that is things you should be doing, but you need to teach people to do those things. You need to be training the people to do the things I just listed. A CEO, a person that's really in charge, the leader of the business, the leader of the food truck, is the one creating structures and processes and frameworks and the things that guide the employee so the employee has something to fall back on. Oh, this is how we do this. This is the recipe. This is how I get this done. Those processes and procedures allow the food truck owner to not be dealing with the minutia of, here's how we wrap a sandwich. They should teach it, they should coach it, but they shouldn't do it. The CEO should be focused on, how do we get a bigger market share? How do we get our metrics to be better? The key metrics, speed of service, the daily sales, the up sales, the suggested selling. How do we get those to be better long term rather than being focused on the single day? I got to make $200 in tips today. When you're focused on tips, you're focused on being an employee. That's the mentality. I cannot stress that enough. So the bottom line is, a tip-focused business owner and a corporate CEO, they aim to maximize their financial success. The problem is their mentalities are different. Their approaches are different. Their priorities are fundamentally different. The tip-focused business owner focuses on immediate and personal interactions. They have short-term gains because they got to get that tip in every single day. In a lot of cases, that's the only pay that some food truck owners get. And the second that they hire an employee, some of them steal the tips and split it. I work just as hard. Well, no, you're stealing tips. You are a hard-working thief is what you are. There are many court cases where supervisors and owners have decided they're going to partake of the tip pool and split it with their employees. And in every single case, they lose. So now they have attorney fees. They have to make back pay for all the tips that they stole. They have to pay back taxes on all of those tips that they stole. And then in many cases, they were also fined. So that short-term gain became a long-term problem. CEOs think long-term. Tip-focused business owners think short-term. I've said this 1,000 times at least in the Facebook group, probably 10,000 times. You cannot be focused on tips because that changes your mentality. You're focused on the day-to-day minutia rather than the long-term strategic building of that food truck business. When you're focused on the work of your hands, you're not going to make as much money. And this is the thing I always say, when you're worried about tips, you've created your own job and you'll be working that job for the rest of your life if you stay in business. But chances are, in that self-created job, you've got a boss you don't like. Thank you so much for listening to the 10-Minute Food Truck Training Podcast. If you're finding all the information helpful to your food truck business, please become a monthly supporter of the podcast. Just hit the support button or follow the link in the description. Every little bit does help keep us going. Join our Facebook group. It's called Food Truck Training. We have a whole bunch of awesome members at all different levels, from brand new beginners to decades-old veterans. They've all got your back when it comes to helping you with your food truck. And again, thank you for listening. Come back tomorrow because you know I got plenty more to say when it comes to helping you and your food truck business grow.